Hello and welcome. Tonight's story will feature relaxing rain sounds mixed with an allegedly true story about a house that serves up your biggest fears in New England. If you enjoy falling asleep to creepy stories, then please consider subscribing to this channel, hitting the like button, and leaving a house emoji, and if you dare, an emoji showing your biggest fear. Thank you for choosing to close your eyes and rest your active mind with me. And now, let's begin. Life got hard, and the choices that I had been making were leading me down the wrong path. I had met these two guys, Rocky and David, and we started breaking into houses, and that's how we made our money. And David, he was alright, but Rocky, he was mean. He used to wear a camera when we broke into someone's house, and if someone was home, he would beat him up really bad, and then he would rewatch the video of him doing that. Just mental. And at some point, I just became afraid to walk away, so I stayed. Things were getting tight, and we ended up close to my hometown. We made our way up there, stopped in at the bar, and I see David talking it up with this group of guys. And he comes over and he is grinning from ear to ear. And he says that the group of guys were telling him about this abandoned house where these two older people used to live, and that it was just full of heirlooms. Gold coins and jewelry, candelabras, silver, china, you name it, and it was left there. And Rocky was excited because this seemed like an easy mark. And then I found out where it was located. It was the old farmhouse up on Trincoke Road, and my heart sunk. You see, the guys that David was talking to, they weren't from our town. When the older couple had died, they didn't have any family. They didn't have a will, so the house went into probate. These guys were sent in from the insurance company to do some repairs so that the house could go to auction. They got in the early morning hours and were done in half a day. In and out. Nice and easy. But I knew better. Legend has it that if you went up to that house and you had skeletons in your closet, that house would break you. There were stories from as far back as when my dad was a kid about people going up there to repair the roof, and on the roof you see at the tree line werewolves, 10 feet tall, big, just staring at you. And these stories came from men who were hard workers and didn't rattle very easily. And they would come back, and more times than not, something bad would happen to them. One guy got into a car accident. One guy drowned in the lake. One guy went to sleep, and his wife said that he was screaming, sweat coming off of his forehead. And then he just went quiet and never woke up again. So I wasn't eager to go up there. But Rocky wasn't somebody you said no to, and he had already made up his mind that we were going up there. I told them everything I knew, and that I wasn't going into that house. And he laughed. That was ridiculous, but I didn't laugh. So we agreed I would drive the car, stay hidden, and that I would pick up the bags as they filled them, and then pick them up when they were done. The drive up there seemed to take forever. There are curves so dark that you can only see a couple feet in front of you. Paved road turned into gravel, and gravel turned into dirt. And then that's when the fog set in, which Rocky and David were excited about. It meant more cover for what they were about to do. You could see the moonlight shining through. It was straight out of a horror movie. So I parked. We went over the plan. I would stay, use a pair of night vision binoculars, and they would take bags and signal me when they were ready. The great thing about late fall in New England is that it gets dark about 5 p.m. and the sun doesn't come up until 7. So they were excited to have a very long time to clear out that house. I was less excited. With the plan details set in stone, I drove up to the house. They got out, and it was warmer than I expected, but I could hear that the ground was firm from being cold, and I could hear their footsteps as they walked towards the front porch. David turned around, and I knew that was my cue to leave. Pulled back out of the driveway, down the road to this little turnaround spot. And I waited. And sure enough, about an hour later, I see the signal. And I drive up there, and they have 4 huge duffel bags clanking around. Threw them into the trunk, not even concerned about the noise that they were making. I guess it didn't matter. There was no one for miles. But something about respect, you know? And they grabbed 4 more duffel bags, and nobody spoke a word. Rocky looked at me, sized me up, and then walked away. And David made eye contact with me. Something was different, but he kept going. So I pulled down the driveway again, and I sat in the turnaround, and it was so much colder. There was no sound, no wind, no leaves falling from the tree and hitting the ground, no owls, no birds, no coyotes, no nothing. An hour and a half goes by. I'm starting to get a little nervous. But then I see the signal, and I never thought that I'd be thankful to be seeing Rocky of all people again. Put the car in drive, and I could hear the tires crunching over the gravel. Swear I felt every pebble. Something just felt off. Maybe my nerves were just getting to me. The longer you're at a place, the more risk you take. But then I just see David, and he's putting 2 duffel bags in the trunk, and he comes over to the driver's side window and leans in and smiles. I'm like, yeah, Rocky's still in there. I'm like, man, there's something going on with that basement, though. There's a lock on the door. Yeah, I probably shouldn't go down there then. Let's not push it. It's like, yeah, but we got all night. David, I don't think it's a good idea. I just don't even think being here is a good idea. Yeah, well, Rocky's in there working on it now. Okay, well, do whatever you guys gotta do. Just do it quickly. David goes in, and he comes back out with 2 more duffel bags, presumably the ones that Rocky filled. And then Rocky comes out. So I get out of the car, and it is cold now. Skin immediately tingles, tightens up. It's hard to take a breath in. And he says, I got it. Grab the hacksaw in case there's copper down there. I just looked at Rocky. I got back in the car. David leaned in the back and got the hacksaw. And I just said, be careful, man. Keep your head on a swivel. And he said, he made it this far in life so far, and closed the door. So I drove back down to the turnaround, and I waited. 1 hour turned into 2. 2 hours turned into 3. And my heart starts to race. And there is this knot in my stomach, and my throat is aching from trying to hold back the fear. Because either way you slice it, I have to go up there and see if they're okay, or I have to drive away. And if I drive away, and Rocky comes walking out of that house and sees that I'm not there, and dead. It was at that moment life came crashing down. I spoke out loud. I don't know if it's to me, if it's to the universe, if it's to God, but I said that if things worked out okay, that I would make things right. But I can't undo the things that I have done, but I certainly can take responsibility for them, and I can change my course. And no matter how terrible of a person Rocky was, and the terrible things that David has done, that I wasn't able to leave them. And I meant it. I meant it, because now I'm in a situation where death is going to come for me. And I had made that decision to put myself there. And if I made it through, things were going to change. So I started the car, drove up to the house, opened the door, put the keys in my jeans pocket, grabbed my phone, grabbed a flashlight, and the night vision binoculars. Out there, where there's no sound, every step you take sounds like a freight train. There is no hiding. The steps creaked as I walked up them, and the porch boards had nails starting to come up, so they moved every time you took a step, and I felt so exposed. And through the windows, you saw nothing. It was just dark. And I got to the door, and I yelled as loud as I could in a whisper, but no answer. And I took a step in, and then another, and I couldn't bring myself to take a third. I looked over to the left, and there were these heavy fabric drapes covering the windows, and they smelled like mildew, must. You could see, even in the dark, they were coated with dust, and the furniture was old and antique, wooden chairs, Victorian sofa. I could see where Rocky and David had been because drawers were left open, so I knew they must have been in that room. And I just stood there, listening. I didn't hear anything. I took a deep breath in, yelled as loud as I could, "Hey guys, I'm gonna leave you here. Where are you?" My voice echoed in the room, and that's when I realized that there were these vaulted ceilings and this huge staircase over to the right. And then I hear a creaking sound, like a door slowly opening, and I listened. I didn't hear anything else other than no footsteps, no breathing, no talking, no clanging of the duffel bags. And I thought, well, maybe it's the wind, so I closed the door. Whatever was going to happen was going to happen, because I'm in this house now. And no matter what you believe, I believe something was wrong with this house. And I don't know why that older couple stayed here as long as they did, but I believe they had respect for this house. And I walked forward. And as I walked down the hallway between the dining room and the staircase, I saw the family photos of the older couple, and they looked nice, they looked normal. And I felt guilty, and I felt shamed. And I kept going, and I get to the kitchen, and on the right-hand side, I see the doorway to the basement, and it had come open, and that must have been the creaking sound that I heard. And I get to the top of the stairs. I yelled as loud as I could for Rocky and David, and I didn't hear anything. And tears are starting to come. I couldn't bring myself to go down there. And as I took a step back, I felt like someone was behind me. My breath quickened, it tensed, started to feel panicked, and I turned around quick, and there was no one there. Just thinking to myself, I gotta get out of here. But as I walked towards the hall, I hear a voice coming from the basement. "Hey, don't leave me here." I think it was David. I don't know. So I run back to the basement door, yelling, "David, is that you?" And I hear it again. "Hey, don't leave me here." But it's different. It's not David. It's more innocent. And now I don't know what I'm dealing with. And so I turned back to the hallway, and as I turned, picked my head up from looking down the basement stairs, I'll never forget what I saw. I saw my sister. She was dressed in this little yellow sundress, with her hair pulled back. And I just stood there thinking, am I really seeing this? I'm not even sure I was breathing. I think I held my breath until my body forced me to take one. And then I heard the voice again from the basement. I can't believe you left me. And there are things from our past that we don't even know that we've forgotten. The look on her face was just acknowledgement that she could see me and that I could see her. And I took a step forward, and another step forward. I was trembling, and I was finally close enough to touch her. And as I reached out, so did she. And when our hands met, it was like I was rocketed back to when we were teenagers. We were out at a swimming hole with a bunch of friends, and we were drinking and jumping off the cliff. And we had done this in the past, so nobody was worried. But all of a sudden, my sister just wasn't around, and nobody remembered when they saw her last. And we jumped in the water, and we all dove. We dove until our lungs burned, until our eyes burned, until we didn't have any more air left, and we couldn't find her. And as I climbed out of the quarry, I saw her little yellow barrette. I just left her there. They never found her, and I was never right. Parents blamed me. I blamed myself. And I'm looking right at her, and I'm hearing this voice say, I can't believe you left me. Because nothing hurt me more in this world. Of all the things that I have ever done, nothing hurt more than leaving her. And I wanted nothing more for her to forgive me for that. And just like that, we were back in the kitchen. The voice was now right behind. The only person who needs to forgive you is you. Have you learned your lesson? And I fell to the ground. There's just things in life where you know what the right thing to do is, but it's just the hardest thing in the world to do. And I sobbed, and I sobbed, and I sobbed. And when I finally stopped, I looked up, and I was alone, and the basement door was closed. And I walked towards the front door, knowing I may never see Rocky and David again. And when I hit the front porch, David was standing by the car, and I asked him, "Are you real?" And he looked at me, and he said, "It's time to go." I didn't question it. If David said we had to go, that meant Rocky was gone. The amount of silence that can be created between two people is palpable sometimes. And when David finally spoke, there was a tremor to his voice. He said in the basement there was this large old chest, and Rocky went over to it and just stood there like he was in a trance. So David went over there and tried to open it, but it wouldn't open. So he walked away. But then he heard the creaking of the hinges. Somehow Rocky had gotten the chest open. And then he heard Rocky say, "What the fuck is this?" So David went back over, and there were pictures in there of this woman with this little boy. And David's response was, "Obviously it's a family keepsake." And Rocky said, "That's my fucking mom and me." And then they both heard this woman's voice from the darkness. "Are you sorry for what you've done, Rocky? Are you sorry?" And then that's when Rocky said, "Fuck this," and he slammed the chest, and they both walked away. But then they heard the creaking of those hinges, and the chest opened again, and this darkness came out of it, slowly filling up the room. And just like that, Rocky was gone, and the chest slammed shut. And then the darkness cleared, and David tried to get the chest open. It just wouldn't come open. He's banging on it. He's yelling for Rocky. There's no noise. There's nothing. Rocky's just gone. So David ran to the steps, and he ran out. And he said that he didn't see the car there at the time, so he ran down to where I was parked, but that the car wasn't there either. And then he ran back to the house. There was no one. He said he thought that I had left him, that Rocky was gone, that he was alone. It's one of the worst things for him. He told me this heartbreaking story about his parents. David was a latchkey kid. He usually was alone for 2 or 3 hours before one of his parents got home. But one night, his parents never came home, and he was alone all night long. Just a kid. He just kept thinking that they would come. And finally, early in the morning, the police showed up and told David that both his parents, unfortunately, were killed. David's mom got off work early, so she went to go surprise David's dad. They were going to pick up dinner and have a movie night. David actually grew up really nice. They got caught at the restaurant in the crossfire of a robbery. And this guy was wearing a clown mask, like traditional red nose, white face, big red smile. David said when he realized that he was alone at the farmhouse, that he could hear the honking of a horn of a clown nose. And he just said that he never wanted his parents more than at that moment, and that he wished he had made different decisions in life. He said just like that, the door opened, you came through it, and then the car was right next to me. I don't know if David and I are lucky enough to not suffer worse fate now that we're not at that house, but I do know that I'm going to be a much better human going forward. And I don't know what happened to Rocky, and I don't know what he should have been sorry for. And that is the house on Trincope Lane. Sleep tight.
Hello, my name is Dan. I discovered an underground intercontinental tunnel system underneath New York City. See, the same day the tunnels were discovered underneath the synagogue in New York City, I decided to head down that way as I'm sort of a nosy person and something just didn't seem right about this whole story, so I had to see it myself. The story about these students allegedly building these tunnels to avoid lockdown restrictions because they just wanted to go to temple so bad was obviously total bullcrap, and the news was obviously covering something up. So I had to find out the truth in person, and you wouldn't believe it, but when I went down to the synagogue, I saw a rabbi crawling out of a sewer grate as I approached. So after he left, I just couldn't resist the urge to explore it myself. So I pushed the sewer grate open and climbed into the darkness. Hello? What I discovered has my mind spinning, and I don't know how to say this, but I discovered an intercontinental tunnel system underneath the New York City synagogue headquarters. There's a golden map on the wall with a massive 5-pointed Jewish star, with each point leading to a different location on the earth. One that stood out to me was a housing complex in Buffalo, New York. Etched into the golden map was a diagram of the housing complex and how the tunnel connected to each one of the basements. This has my mind spinning. What have I discovered? As I look around, I struggle to even begin to describe what I have seen. As I look, there is endless gold stretching as far as the eye can see. And there is was treasure in every direction, and a shallow river in the middle of each tunnel with sunken gold underneath it. Tied up to the edge was a small boat with a lantern on it. I'm not sure why, but I decided to climb into it, and the next thing I knew, I was undoing the rope tied to the edge of the river, and I was flowing with the current, my lantern illuminating the walls. Flickering in the lantern's light was a teddy bear tossed on the bottom of the boat. Creepy. The interior of the tunnel was dark and musty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling and a thick layer of dust covering everything. I made my way down a narrow river in my little boat. Suddenly, I heard the faint voices of a far-off orchestra singing a glorious symphony, the sound coming down the tunnel and getting louder as I drew closer, bathing me in symphony, hypnotizing me. Was this a spell? Yes, this was a spell, and I tensed my muscles and woke myself up out of the spell and splashed my face with water. I approached the source of the sound. Above me was some kind of grate into a church cathedral. I could see the illumination of thousands of candles and the light illuminating the church choir. They suddenly stopped, and I heard a whisper. "He's here. Quickly, bring the boy." And then, with a hush and a rush, I heard hundreds of footsteps rushing down what must have been a staircase near me, and as I passed by, the door rushed open, with hundreds of hooded men dressed in robe carrying what looked like a body wrapped in a decorative sheet covered in some type of golden pattern. They shouted, "Jacob, Jacob, where are you going? Stop! You forgot the boy." Who was Jacob? And what were they carrying? What was this boat for? What is this tunnel for? I realized with a growing sense of horror that I had stumbled upon an ancient cult hidden deep beneath the streets of New York City. As I stared with my mouth open, I knew I had to escape. But the cultists had already spotted me. They began to chase me through the tunnels, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. As I paddled as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest, their footsteps and screams mere inches behind me, I felt the warm breath of their screams and the water from their pounding footsteps splashing against my back and neck. My shirt was drenched. I was convinced I would be ripped off the boat and into the water any second. I felt like I was about to die, and my heart began to beat so loud in my chest it drowned out their screams and splashing footsteps. I paddled so hard my hands began to bleed, and I never stopped paddling. Over time, with God's mercy, the footsteps and screams began to fade behind me until they became silent. I looked back, and there was only endless darkness behind me. I'm not sure what horror awaits me, but clearly there is no turning back. Down here, there are hundreds of Comet Pizza boxes littered all over the place. I've heard of this Comet Pizza before. I know it's a place here in New York City, and now I'm convinced it's connected to these tunnels. Otherwise, why would there be pizza boxes literally everywhere inside these tunnels? I suppose if I grow weak from starvation, I will end up rifling through these empty pizza boxes, looking for uneaten slices. Is that how I will leave this world? Looking for uneaten scraps from some pizza cult in a secret tunnel underneath this city? Maybe, or maybe it's how I will survive to live another day. And that's when I saw it. That's when I heard it. That's when I smelled it. Unbelievable. There was literally a running Comet Pizza delivery car parked on the edge of the river. Yes, running. Keys inside, door open. I quickly climbed out of my tiny boat and climbed into what looked like a 1990s Dodge Neon 5-speed. And let me tell you, this car smelled like a mixture of pizza, gasoline, sweet and tangy wings, and Rockstar energy drinks, and it was facing the direction I came from, the direction of the cult. Perfect. This is the exact direction this car needs to be facing. All 4,000 pounds of heavy metal. I clicked the seatbelt, let go of the clutch, lit one of the Camel menthols sitting on the seat, exhaled and breathed a sigh of relief. I got the car going over 100 miles per hour, and there they were with their torches lit, running after me to kill me. But the opposite was about to happen. I'm not going to tell you what happened next, but let's just say that cult is not going to be a problem anymore. I'm not sure whose car this is, but screw that person. I'm just glad I got out of there alive. And maybe I'll go check out this Comet Pizza place. Take my Comet Pizza delivery car and see where the road takes me. Maybe this is the beginning of my journey as a hero to save this city, one pizza delivery at a time. Hello, my name is Travis, and I'm a 42-year-old pizza delivery boy at Comet Pizza. I know, I'm kinda old for this gig, but hey, you can't beat the tips, and you can't beat the occasional slice from a customer's pizza. Am I right? Besides, my car is kinda trashy, so I don't mind beating on it since I drive a 1996 Dodge Neon 5-speed. So, this is how it all started. One night, I received an order to deliver a pizza to a house on the outskirts of town. The address was unfamiliar to me, but I didn't think too much of it. I just got into my car, lit up another Camel menthol, pressed play on my Pioneer CD player, put the car in gear, and let go of the clutch. No need for a seatbelt on the job. I glanced down at the order and I was pleased to see it was a large pepperoni pizza and boneless wings, my favorite. The customer never notices when a few wings are missing, so I ate 3 of them, and I also ate a slice of pizza and just reorganized it, like Chuck E. Cheese does, after I ate it so nothing looked like it was missing. No problem. As I drove down the dark, winding road, I noticed that there were no streetlights. The only light came from my headlights, which were quite dim and dirty and needed to be cleaned. You could barely see the road as you drove my car. It was horrible. I began to feel uneasy, but I brushed it off as nerves. When I finally arrived at the house, I noticed that it was very old and decrepit. The paint was peeling and the windows were boarded up. I was like, are you serious? I hesitated for a moment, but I knew I had to deliver this pizza. The house was in a remote area and was surrounded by very dense woods. As I approached the house, I noticed that all the lights were off and there was no sign of life. I rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. I called the customer, but the phone went straight to voicemail. The strange thing was, I could have sworn I heard a cell phone ringing from the woods. I was about to leave when I heard a faint whisper coming from the woods. I couldn't make out what it was saying, but it sounded like a woman's voice. I knew I should have just left, but I decided to investigate, and I walked into the woods. I was only wearing a t-shirt and shorts, as it gets really hot inside the pizza place, but outside it was freezing cold, and freezing rain was coming down, and there was a thick covering of snow on the ground. It was all the way up to my shorts, and I was getting snow in my Air Jordans. I should have known better. As I got closer, the whispering grew louder, and I could hear the sound of footsteps. Suddenly, I saw a figure emerge from the woods. It was a woman, and she was holding a pizza box and a knife. She handed me the box and whispered, "Enjoy your meal." I was too scared to say anything. And then, without warning, she pushed me over, stole the pizza without paying, and ran into the woods. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the pitch black woods, drenched in freezing rain. My immediate concern was getting back to my car and getting the hell out of there. But when I stood up, I couldn't make out any lights or where the house or where the road was. I had ventured only slightly into the woods, but these woods were so dense, I couldn't make out where the edge of the woods were and what direction my car was in. At this point, I grew so scared that this psycho woman was still in the woods with me. So, just to be sure she was gone, I tried calling her phone to see if I could hear it ring nearby. Another bad mistake. It rang, and I saw the screen illuminate in the distance. I squinted and could actually see it was illuminating the inside of a yellow tent. Before I could hang up, a male's voice answered and said, "Who the F is this?" I got scared and immediately hung up the phone and crouched down. That's when my phone rang and also illuminated my screen. I stupidly answered it without thinking and said, "Hello?" The voice at the other end was the male's voice again, and he said, "I can see you, and I can hear you, and I'm coming to get you right now, and I'm going to kill you." I immediately hung up, and while I still didn't know what direction my car was in, I knew any direction but their tent was a good direction to run. So I immediately sprinted in the other direction. In mere seconds, I tripped over a stick and ran headfirst into a stump. I then got up without hesitation, like that didn't even just happen, and continued running. I was sure I most likely had a concussion and just hoped that I wouldn't pass out or go unconscious. I ran until my body was so hot that the freezing cold rain felt good on my skin, and then I ran some more and never stopped running. My phone is almost dead, and I'm submitting this story before my phone dies so that no one else makes the same mistake as me. Never, ever deliver a pizza to 209 Tall Pines Drive.
Welcome to Mr. and Mrs. Creeps, entertaining stories with a little extra as you drift off to sleep. Turn your lights down low and rest your eyes. Please enjoy the show. The wind was picking up. As I sat on the floor going over my checklist, I found my thoughts wandering to more nostalgic times. Times when a winter storm meant you gave yourself an extra 1 or 2 hours to get to work or school, but now in this place, with the potential of a moderate storm, we were on lockdown. Growing increasingly annoyed at the overstep of our leaders to prevent people from existing freely in the world, I felt a nudge on my arm. Echo, my midnight black dog, brought me back from the ethers where I often spent my time. Slow breath in, slow breath out. let it go. I never have to speak to E. She understands me on a level no living creature ever had before. Okay, back to the checklist. New batteries in Echo's feed and water dispensers. I had water, fresh produce, nuts, granola, thermals, and battery banks set out just in case we lost power. E and I have experienced the loss of electricity and heat several times over the past few winters, despite the rise in my heating bill to the power company, so we were experts in surviving for long durations in below freezing temperatures and surviving well. When the power's out, it's peaceful. It's comforting to not be bombarded by electrical waves. It's the only time that the ringing in my ears ever stops and I can feel the world around me. I'm confident that we're all set. I'm excited to put on a scary movie, grab the blankets, and just curl up with Echo while the wind howled outside. And I nodded to E that it was time for her to go out one more time before the peak of the storm. Walking through the kitchen, I felt the floor was starting to get cold from the Arctic air that the storm was bringing in. I opened the door, expecting E to burst into the yard and chase down every dangerous leaf that made the mistake of rolling through, but instead, she stood quiet, head low, ears slightly back, tail motionless. Something was very wrong. E was a very loving and smart dog, but she's successfully and aggressively chased off coyotes and bears. So to see her not cross the threshold and maintain that stance was unsettling. Standing with the door open, I held my breath and I listened, trying to sense what E was picking up on. In comparison to her ability to feel energy and the heightened sense of smell and her ability to see in low light, my senses were crude. I was going to have to go into that yard if I wanted to know what bothered her. I decided that I would leave E inside for the first sweep, just in case there was a downed wire or an agitated animal that was displaced from the storm. And if I didn't find anything, I would take her out on a lead just a few feet from the door, and we could run back in if we needed to. I put my boots on and my jacket and grabbed my hunting knife, and I told myself there's no time to think, just need to keep moving forward, be alert. Then I opened the door and I stepped one foot out and E whined. I looked back at her concerned face. She almost looked sad. She would be fine though. Even if something happened to me, my parents adored her, and if I didn't check in with them, they would come check in on her before they checked on me. So I made sure I closed the door behind me, and I stepped into the porch. There was a slight charge in the air, and I wondered if there was a downed power line. My first step into the yard was normal. The ground was not fully frozen yet, so my foot sank just a bit, and the second step brought me to the bridge of a large ship. The floor was metal, and it had an intricate pattern on it. There were windows lining both sides of the walls. The front was filled with consoles and windows in front of those, and those windows doubled as holographic screens. And for a moment, I wondered if I was dead, or lying unconscious on the ground, and this was my mind's way of dealing with it. But I smelled the salt from the ocean, and I felt my knees buckle with the waves. And there was sunlight shining on my arm, and I felt its warmth. And then I realized there was a person in the room, and he was dressed in dark gray pants with gray accents and a gray-colored shirt. And he made some motions in front of the screen, and it turned blue. And he walked over to me, and he held out his hand and introduced himself as Jim. And I blurted out, "Am I dead?" He smiled, and his smile was kind and comforting. And he shook his head and said, "No, you're not dead. You've been chosen, and I'm here to help you on this part of your journey." I'm sure you have more questions, but it would be best if you sat down and buckled up. The next part of this gets a little bit exciting. And I think I followed his instructions out of shock, but I sat down and I secured this 5-point harness around me, and Jim came over and he tightened the straps and he smiled and he walked back to the consoles. My gaze drifted out the side windows and I saw nothing but water and sky, and I was humbled at how small we were in such a large ship at the vast sea of gently rolling waves. And a feeling of calm just suddenly washed over me. I was staring at the water, trying to figure out if I was hallucinating or not, when I noticed that we had company. A pod of dolphins was keeping pace with us, jumping in and out of the wake over one another. It was mesmerizing. Their colors of light and dark grays matched Jim's outfit almost perfectly. As we glided through the waters, they started to become iridescent. At first, it was a soft glow of brilliant bright white that eventually became so bright that they were hard to look at. I turned to Jim, and just as I was about to draw his attention to these angelic dolphins, I noticed under his feet was a circle that was also starting to glow in the same manner. We picked up speed, and the waves became unnoticeable as we skipped over top of them, and the dolphins were still with us. My heart was racing, and my hands gripped the straps of the harness so tightly that my hands began to hurt, and I said, "Breathe." Slow, deep breaths. We were going faster and faster, and as I thought the dolphins were going to fall behind, they rocketed forward, leaving a trail of light that culminated in one single point right in front of us. And Jim seemed calm, and he was able to keep the ship steady. There was nothing I could do but hold on, and we entered the sphere of light at such a high speed that I became disoriented and lightheaded. Then there was this flash, and as my eyes adjusted, I realized that we were gently gliding in a brand new place. The water here was deep blue and calm, and the only ripples were caused by our presence. And I loosened the grip on the straps, and I unbuckled myself. And I was still a little unsteady, but I made my way over to Jim, and he placed his hand on my shoulder, and I instantly felt better. And he said, "Welcome to Lyra Vega." He tapped his fingers in the air above the screen, and it blinked off, and then this cave materialized in the distance. We stayed in silence as he skillfully maneuvered between the thick walls, going deeper into the darkness. The opening behind us closed, and as it did, soft lighting appeared just beneath the surface of the water like a runway. And a few minutes later, I spotted a platform, and Jim docked the ship. He motioned for me to disembark, and I stood on the platform in amazement of how massive this cave was. It was then I heard a familiar voice. "Hey, stranger, I see you finally decided to join us." And I was confused. There in front of me stood an old friend whom I had not seen in years, but I dearly adored. I called him Sphinx because he was obsessed with Egyptian folklore and even more obsessed with the pyramids. "Sphinx, I don't know where I am. I don't know why I'm here. And I don't know why you're here." He says, "So you're not up to speed." "Yeah. Jim's a great captain, but he's not big on the details. Come with me, and I'll fill you in." And we walked for at least a half-mile before we came to a flight of stairs that led to automatic doors, and he led me down hallway after hallway, and we ended up in a room that looked like a lecture hall. And he gave me some water, and he sat down, and what he told me changed the course of my life. We are at war. There is no other way to put it other than there is true darkness that exists And the light that humanity naturally has been keeping that darkness contained. The darkness has done everything possible to keep the divine nature of humanity suppressed. Humans are so strongly connected with source energy that they are masters at creating something from nothing. They can heal themselves and each other with just intentions and their emotions, just like they can hurt each other. And even though they are inundated with crises after crises that are meant to keep their spirit in anxiety and worry, they are at their very core love, hope, joy, and determination. It is because of that the darkness has been contained. This has recently changed. The dark has poisoned the water, poisoned the food, the air, the land. It has taken technology that came from pure inspiration and hid it for its own use after killing its creator. It's trapped children in an unnatural education system and indentured everyone in a toxic, unbalanced economic system. It has turned men and women against one another. It has created sickness and disease with a false medical system that touts itself as a savior. It hides behind pointing fingers at governments, corporations, world leaders, and conspiracy theorists. And it works. If people are distracted, they won't seek the truth, right? All of this is to keep humanity dim so that the light they have won't ever be known. If humans ever knew their true nature, the darkness could not exist. We don't know exactly how, but they are stronger, and humanity is in danger of being wiped out. That cannot be allowed. If humans were collectively ever aware of their true power, the light would be so bright it would touch every realm from what was to what is to what will be. And you have a bright inner light. An echo was sent to you as a guardian. She's sort of a watchdog to let us know if you are ready and to keep you safe. She thinks very highly of you. Oh, Echo. I had completely forgotten to be concerned for her, and Sphinx held his hand up to me and then he waved it at the back wall. And an image of Echo lying safely with my parents appeared, and I instantly felt relieved and scared for them at the same time. What must they be going through now that I'm missing? And Sphinx continued to say, if you stay, your parents will be targets, but Echo will stay with them as their guardian. They will be safe with her, and we will send them divine support so that they celebrate you and not grieve you. But it's your choice. You can return to the life that you left, just as you left it. Or you can stay here and fight. Being a warrior of the light, it can be as simple as providing comfort to someone, or it can be diving into the depths of hell, riding a dragon, absorbing the dark and turning it to light. I stared at Echo with my parents. I felt her, missed her. And there was a long pause as I just stared. At any other time, it must be easy to choose between divine purpose over the rat race of life, but right now it felt oppressive. And just as I made the decision to go into the backyard to check it before I let Echo out, I told myself there's no time to think. I just need to keep moving forward and be alert. And I half smiled at Sphinx and said, dragon in the depths of hell, huh? And he smiled back and said, "Well, an ethereal dragon in the depths of hell. Her name is Freya. I think you'll like her." Thank you for listening to part 1 of this story. Good night, sleep tight, under starry skies until morning light.
Hello, welcome. Tonight's story will feature relaxing rain sounds mixed with an allegedly true story about a gas station in Alabama. If you enjoy falling asleep to creepy stories, then please consider subscribing, and thank you for choosing this channel when you have so many other options to choose from. And now, let's begin. My name is Jack. I'm a high school student here who recently bought a very expensive Dodge Challenger. I don't have many friends, and it is my hopes that this car will increase my popularity and maybe even get me a girlfriend. I don't have much money, and I needed to get a job as soon as possible to make my car payment on this stupid car that I didn't even think about before buying, that I cannot afford. Also, looking for a job, I didn't think much about it. I just applied at the first place I saw. I was driving around in my car, which was low on gas, because I'm always broke and I'm always putting only $5 at a time in the tank. So I pull in to the local gas station that says now hiring, and I think to myself, well, it's worth a shot. So I go in and inquire about filling out an application. The odd thing was, they didn't even want me to fill out an application. They said if I'm interested in working, to just show up tonight at midnight. I thought that was odd, but I really needed the job. And I thought, hey, well, it's even easier if I don't have to fill out the application. So I said, okay, I'll be here. I went home, got some rest, and woke up at 11 p.m., got ready, and headed to work a little bit early. I pulled in to the gas station and expected to be greeted by my trainer, who I had not met yet. But when I pulled in, I opened the door, and it was empty. No one was there. Not even a soul, not a sound. It was just silent. You could hear the humming of the lights. It was so quiet. It smelled odd. That was the first thing I noticed. It smelled like kerosene and BO mixed with the sweet smell of something that I could not put my finger on. But it was not pleasant, to say the least. I literally did not know what to do. I couldn't just go home. I needed this job, so I just stood around. After 15 minutes had passed, I began to grow increasingly annoyed. Was I even going to get paid tonight? Did the person that's supposed to be training me just not come in? What was I supposed to do? Literally 2 hours had passed, when I finally heard a noise. The toilet had flushed. Out of the door comes a 30-year-old male, unshaven, with a dirty uniform and a name tag that reads Tom. Tom was the source of the smell that I detected when I originally walked inside the gas station. This person had literally been inside of the bathroom for 2 hours. I'm not sure if he fell asleep or if he just takes that long going to the bathroom. The oddest part of it all was he didn't even apologize. He didn't even address it. He didn't address the fact that he was just in the bathroom for 2 hours while I waited for him. So he just began training me and showing me what the duties of the job were, which, according to Tom, were to stand behind the cash register and just cash people out. Tom also showed me a set of rules that I must abide by. Tom handed me the rules and said, "Go over these while I clean up a little bit. And when you're done, just call out for me and I will come see you and we will get back to work." So I thought to myself, okay, well, this should be easy. And I spent the next 15 minutes reading over the rules, which seemed to be someone's sick idea of a joke. You know how these rules go. Don't look at the security camera. If you see someone in a hoodie walk by the window, don't make eye contact. If you do make eye contact, you have to lie down on the ground with your face looking down until they just leave. It took me no longer than 1 minute to read the whole set of rules. But Tom said to spend 15 minutes reading them to ensure that I understand them thoroughly. So, I just played on my phone for the next 15 minutes. 15 minutes passed, and I looked around, and once again, Tom was nowhere to be seen. I thought he's probably in the bathroom, and it would likely be rude to interrupt him by calling out his name to let him know that I was done reading the rules. So I just sat there. And then the creepiest, strangest thing happened, which I cannot make sense of. All of the lights in the gas station turned off. I thought to myself, well, if Tom's in the bathroom and I'm at the register and I haven't moved my body because I've been sitting here staring at my phone, perhaps the lights are on a motion sensor. I did not know what to do. It would not make any sense for the lights in the gas station to be on a motion sensor. But what do I know? This is literally my first job ever. I'm not an electrician. I don't know anything about gas station interior lights. So I just sat there. I sat there so incredibly scared and confused about why the lights had went out. I thought about calling out Tom's name, but the weird thing was, after I didn't, then I just hadn't, and more time passed, and next thing you know, I looked at my phone, and literally, 1.5 hours had passed since the lights turned off. And I thought to myself, this is it. I have to call out Tom's name. Even if he's taking a dump, this certainly qualifies as requiring me to get his assistance. So I called out his name. I called out, Tom! Tom, are you there? Tom, the lights went off. Nothing. Nothing at all. I went to see if the lights were on in the bathroom, so I got out my phone and turned on the flashlight and went to the employee bathroom. There were no lights on in the bathroom, and I thought to myself, well, maybe Tom's asleep in there, or maybe the lights went off because they're a motion sensor. It happens, and it's just awkward. You can't turn them back on because the location of the toilet is not located in the beam of the motion sensor. So I knocked on the door and I said, Tom, are you in there? After calling Tom's name and receiving no response, I decided that I needed to get out of the gas station. I was alone, my trainer could not be located, and all of the lights being off was too much to handle. Over an hour and a half had passed, and I decided I am just going to get the hell out of here. The strange thing is, as I exited the gas station, I saw the taillights of a vehicle and the exhaust coming out. This vehicle was parked close enough to my car that I could see, as I approached my car, that Tom was inside this vehicle. The window was down, and I could hear Tom. He was talking on the phone. So I approached Tom's vehicle, and I said, Hey Tom, what's going on? Tom said, Nothing. Why? What's wrong? And I said, all of the lights went off inside. I called out for you, but I couldn't find you. Over an hour and a half had passed. And that's when he said, Oh, well, you were only supposed to take 15 minutes reading the set of rules. Why did you take so long? As if I had done something wrong. As if I was the unprofessional one here. I could not believe this. I thought this could not get any more ridiculous. But that's when Tom did this. Tom said, Hey man, it's a really slow night. I don't think anyone else is coming in tonight. Usually we don't get any customers after 2 a.m. And if we do, I think you can handle it. Just follow the rules. Everything you need to know is there. I'm going to a party, and if there's any problems, I don't want to hear about it, so don't fuck this up for me. I knew that I didn't really know how to do this job, but I needed the job, and what else was I gonna say? He was my superior. He was my manager. What was I supposed to do? Defy his order on my first night? And let him know that I was not capable of performing these duties? So I just said, okay, yes, I can do that. And just like that, Tom did not even say goodbye. He didn't say another word. He literally put his car in reverse while he was still talking on the phone illegally and got on the highway and just left. I don't even think he clocked out. I think he's still on the clock right now as I'm writing this. So I proceeded to walk back into the store, and upon opening the entrance door, the lights clicked back on. My presumption was correct. The interior lights of the gas station operate on a motion sensor. I didn't really know what to do, so I just walked back up to the cash register in case someone did come in and they needed to buy anything. Luckily for me, there was a chair at the cash register, so I just sat there and pulled out my phone and scrolled through Facebook until I began to get tired. And then I thought to myself, well, I'll just close my eyes, and if someone comes in, I'm sure I'll hear them and I'll wake up before it's a problem.